This is He Knows Everything, bringing you that heat that far. We keeping a foot on the wood on the geeks. We keeping a foot on the wood on the geeks. Let me talk about it, man. See, this is what I was talking about when I say black boxing community fan base. They don't get it. Devin Haney hasn't proven anything. Devin Haney doesn't have equity. Equity equals leverage. Let me say it again. Equity equals leverage. That's like equity on your home, equity in business, equity in anything. When you have equity, that means you have a positive. That means you have a gain. You have a net gain. You have something that you could use not only as profit, but you can use it as collateral to get what the fuck you want to get. What collateral does Devin Haney have other than them giving him an email championship belt? You Rudy Poo and Plum Plum Brains. You classic dotes and troglodytes. You ultra fanboys with the ultra fanboy rhetoric. You brain full of mush and brainwashed dodo heads. That's all he has. All he has to his name is a guy who pretty much got an email championship belt for street cred of ducking Lomachenko. Street cred only gets you so far. There's a thing called actual credibility, verifiable credibility, certifiable credibility, authorizable credibility. Credibility has to be something that's tangible. It has to be liquid. It has to showcase itself as liquid assets. Where's the liquidation of what Devin Haney has been able to bring from an equity equal leverage standpoint? What do I mean when I'm saying all of these business one-on-one terms? Devin Haney has nothing to bargain with. Mauricio Solomon understands this. See, a lot of boxing fans, they don't understand business. All they understand is, let it keep it boxing, let it keep it boxing. You know, the one trick viewpoint of, let it keep it boxing, let it keep it boxing. They go from one channel, like opera singers, and then they go to the next channel, like opera singers. But they don't understand business. When you understand business and you understand the full weight, the full gravity, and the full magnitude of what Devin Haney lacks, you could understand why Mauricio Solomon gave him a pride belt. He emasculated him. And Devin Haney deserves the emasculation because Devin Haney doesn't have leverage. See, Lomachenko fought Gary Russell Jr. He made Gary Russell Jr. embarrassed in that fight. He fought Gary Russell Jr. when there was no excuses. Gary Russell Jr. has been trying to fight Lomachenko ever since. Loma beat Gary Russell Jr. at a more youthful stage, arguably at a more prime stage, and arguably at a very dangerous time when Gary Russell Jr. was unfucking defeated. That's why Lomachenko's a credible, verifiable, authorizable champion. As much as you want to sit there and spit on him, he has that. Now, the Guillermo Rigondeaux fight, him bringing his ass up to 2 weight classes, you can justify that. You can argue that shit up and down. I can argue that with the best of them because they should have met at an even weight class. Loma goes down 1, Guillermo goes up 1. That would have been a more comparable, more understandable fight. But Loma knew exactly what he was doing, having Guillermo Rigondeaux go up 2 weight classes. That's why he beat him up the way he did. Guillermo Rigondeaux was in at his fucking best. But 1-1, everybody's at a disadvantage. So now everyone has something to lose. But when he fought Gary Russell Jr., both of these motherfuckers were right where they needed to be at, same fucking weight class. As a matter of fact, the same weight class that Shakur Stevenson's in, and they went toe-to-toe. They went at it. And who was the victor? Vasily Lomachenko. Vasily Lomachenko signed his check and made his fucking payday that day because he fought an undefeated fighter in Gary Russell Jr. and he beat him legitimately. To the point that Gary Russell Jr. has been bitter about that. That's why Lomachenko is a verifiable, certifiable, and authorizable champion. That gives him equity. That's how Mauricio Solomon was willing to give him a franchise belt. That gave him leverage. Devin Haney doesn't fucking have that. Devin Haney doesn't have equity. Devin Haney doesn't have leverage. And if you don't have equity, you don't have fucking leverage. And equity equals fucking leverage. So what am I saying when I say all of this? We have to be honest with ourselves here. Black boxing community fan bases, they're not honest. They don't want to tell the fucking truth. They don't want to sit here and tell you anything that makes any kind of fucking sense on any fucking levels. And the reason for that is because they're reciprocating the same mistakes they reciprocated with Deontay Wilder. They're reciprocating those same mistakes with Devin Haney. They're being blind, leading the blind into a blind ditch. Let me say it again. The blind leading the blind into a blind ditch. They don't want to be honest with these fighters. You have to be honest with these fighters. You have to tell them the truth. Devin Haney has nothing to leverage. So that's why George Kambosos Jr. can play in his face. Beggars can't be choosers. Beggars have no leverage. And Mauricio Solomon understands that. And that's why Mauricio Solomon went and spit in Devin Haney's face. There's only one way Devin Haney can have vindication here. There's only one way Devin Haney puts the pressure. And I'm talking about unlimited pressure. Because pressure does it versus pipes. On the Gary Russell Jr., I want you to see the background of what I said to Devin Haney. He has to fight Gary Russell Jr. and beat him definitively. Because what we saw was a DuckTales. A DuckTales. There's a stranger out to find you. There's a stranger out to find you. What to do is grab on you some DuckTales. It was a fucking DuckTales. He ducked Gary Russell Jr. And because he ducked him, the fight itself, that duckage has left a stainage on his boxing resume. If he would have fought the fight, even if he would have lost to the guy that so-called called him amateur professional, Devin Haney in a loss to Gary Russell Jr. would have more credibility. We ain't talking about street cred of no email championship of ducking Lomachenko. We're talking about actual credibility for losing to Gary Russell Jr. and taking on that challenge and taking on that fight than him being in the position that he's in right now. If you notice, he has to call everybody out. He's getting the scraps. He's getting basically the leftovers. He's not getting the actual fights that's putting fight fans in the seat. In the Jojo Diaz fight, they mistaked him for Gervonta Tank Davis. It's the things that make you say, It's the things that make you say, they mistaked him for Gervonta Tank Davis. How did they make that fucking mistake? Well, they made that fucking mistake because it's as simple as this. Gervonta Tank Davis puts fight fans in the seats. They said, isn't that Tank from Mayweather Promotions? That means Devin Haney is a non-factor. He's a non-name. And see, people want to sit here and blame this shit on Floyd Mayweather. This shit don't got nothing to do with Floyd. It has everything to do with the fact that Devin Haney didn't bend the proverbial fucking knee, kiss the ring while he was at it, and basically understand that Floyd could have taken him to the next level. That's not Floyd's problem. That's a Devin Haney fucking problem. So now Devin Haney has to deal with the ramifications of the decisions that he's making. And now he has Mickey Bay singing beta male soliloquies about Floyd Mayweather. When in actuality, Floyd got this guy to be fucking champion. This is not what losers, drunks, buffoons, and coons are telling you. If it wasn't for Floyd Mayweather, who the fuck would know Mickey Bay? Mickey Bay wouldn't even be in line in position to even train Devin Haney. So it's the things that make you say, It's the things that make you say, But in this most cold-hearted, unadulterated, and cutthroat truth teller fashion, we have to look at the delineation, the distinction, the gulf, and the separation. What's that? Devin Haney is not where it's at. And the first step in the 12-step program of a fucking addiction is the first step of getting out of the state of in denial. The longer that Devin Haney stays in this state, the worse it's going to be for him. The worse it's going to be for Bill Haney. The worse it's going to be for that bullshit and fuck shit hype man. I don't know where the fuck they got that drunk from. That's why he got basically called out the last time he wanted to fight somebody. Man, he would have got his ass whooped. Let me say it again. He would have got his ass whooped. And I would have laughed at him getting his ass whooped. And that whole Devin Haney team. They're going to get the Mayweather curse. Because when you talk bad about Mayweather, he puts a hex on you, dog. Let me say it again. When you talk bad about Mayweather, he puts a hex on you. Devin Haney's not moving right. And when you're not moving right, like Floyd always tells you, you have to have the right team around you. When you don't have the right team around you, you find yourself in a pride belt fate. I keeps the foot on the what on the Higgs. I keeps the foot on the what on the Higgs. This is He Knows Everything. Check it out.